In 15 minutes, Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 analyst and content creator, gives us his thoughts on the Big 12 weekend that was on the hardwood. Games to react to in basketball Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Looking specifically at the Power 5 matchups, Arizona 69 over UCLA 65. Michigan knocked off TCU in a much closer game than maybe we expected for TCU, 67-63. That's sixth-ranked Michigan. Gonzaga knocked off Arizona State 77-65. Another win for the Big 12 against Texas A&M. UCF 86, Texas A&M 74. Also, a sneaky good win for Colorado over Providence, 97-88. Then Saturday we saw BYU lose to UConn in a great game, 86-84. Before Sunday, Houston knocked off Auburn 73-72. What stands out to you about those games, James? Those are the Power 5 wins and losses for the Big 12 this weekend.
Well, believe it or not, I will actually start with a loss because the game that was played in Boston, part of the Hall of Fame series between UConn and BYU, was an instant classic, and Utah led most of the game. And in the second half, Utah led by 16 or 17. AJ Debansa just took over for BYU, and this had an NCAA tournament feel to it, very much like the Arizona-Florida game did earlier in the year. But listen to AJ Debansa. How do we say his last name? Debansa? Debansa. Here's how AJ says his last name. This is the official pronunciation.
AJ Debansa.
Debansa.
AJ Debansa.
Not Debansa.
Not Debansa. Not Debansa.
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 AJ Debansa.
AJ with an emphasis on the D, Debansa.
So we've been saying it wrong this entire time.
Not just us, everybody.
Yeah.
Ari. In fact, we're probably closest to saying it right. And I'm watching this game, this UConn-BYU game, and they say his name differently about 1,000 times. So I'm pretty excited Friday to set the world on fire with my correct, what many people will think is incorrect pronunciation. But he is, you know, we toss around the word generational talent. I know that we don't like to use that phrase because the generation's a really long time. But this dude is incredible. He is the closest thing I think we've seen in college basketball probably since Kevin Durant, just the way that he can take over a game. And the difference is this BYU team is better around him than that Texas team was when Durant was there for his 1 year.
Here is what Kevin Young said about AJ Debansa.
Well, it's been a good experience. You know, he's a mature young man. I think I respect about him is he's coming here and he respects things that are already in place. You know, I think he respects what Richie did for our team last year. I think he respects the fact that Richie was the first team all-league player, most improved player in our league, and has come in and not made it all about himself. But at the same time, has been able to deliver in big moments for us. He did it in the Villanova game, took the game over down the stretch, you know, made some huge plays tonight repeatedly. But the way he goes about his business, I really respect it. I think he's a very mature young man, and obviously the talent is on full display. But what's more impressive is how he goes about his business. I mean, I've been around some of the greatest players that this game's ever had, and they all have the same thing in common in terms of how they go about their approach and how much they're a student of the game and how hard they want to be coached. And I see a lot of similarities in his mentality, similar to the great guys I coach. Very fortunate to coach in the NBA.
Mm.
I mean, he is going to be a guy that is not just probably the first pick in the upcoming NBA draft, but I mean, he's going to be an instant star. When you look at what VJ Edgecombe has already done this year for the 76ers, and we saw flashes of that last year where we all knew he was going to be a perfect fit for the NBA, that is AJ Debansa. And he had 25 points in this game, only had 4 at halftime. He is a selfless player, and down the stretch, what was so impressive was, like, BYU had to score every time they had the ball. That was their only chance in this game.
Yeah, UConn shot like 57% from the floor.
So what they did is they got the ball to AJ Debansa and they got out of his way. And he took over with Kobe Jordan-esque fadeaways, with up and unders, with and ones, playing through contact and absorbing contact. And it was incredible to watch. Now, you can look at the fact that BYU lost the game and never really led in this contest, But I look at the positives being that, and BYU is already ahead of where they were this time last year defensively. They were a total mess defensively until about midway through the season. My point is they're going to get better on that into the floor because they have the athleticism, they have the pieces. They're just struggling to put it together. And right now they're playing a little bit of street ball, if you will.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this was a 20-point lead that through that stretch, BYU whittled the lead down to 2, but it was free throws that essentially won the game for UConn down the stretch. But they chipped away the 20-point deficit and got it to 86-84. And then, of course, the finish as well. Gonzaga 77, ASU 65. I thought, again, as you mentioned the loss, I think this is another kind of impressive loss to a degree. I mean, Gonzaga is a really good team. And, I mean, Arizona State had it close. Arizona State had it 49-44. And then with 5.5 minutes remaining, it was the former Arizona State Sun Devil, Adam Miller, who knocked down back-to-back three-pointers that kind of put Gonzaga in the lead for good here, 67-52, and prevent the comeback. But overall, disappointing loss here for Arizona State, but they felt in it the entire way, and we got to see, Mo Odom. We saw the full repertoire of him and what his abilities are. 12 points, hit 4 3-pointers, dished out 7 assists. So, Bryce Ford, there are just a lot of dudes for Arizona State that we're starting to see emerge here in these first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest takeaway is right now they have something they didn't have ever last year, and that is depth. I mean, they were able to go 8 guys steady as part of their rotation and had a 9th guy in Trevor Best who logged 5 minutes. So that was definitely a positive for them. Gonzaga has an absolutely loaded roster. The other game that I looked at from yesterday was the way Houston beat Auburn. Auburn had the ball in the final half minute on 4 separate offensive possessions. They got blocked. The ball goes out of bounds. Rebound. Ball gets batted out of bounds. They had it 4 times, and Houston had 4 goal line stands, if you will, to close out this game. Houston is already so much further ahead this year than they were this time last year. Breakout games from Kingston Flemings and Chris Sunak. Flemings had 22. Sunak had 18 and 9 for this Houston team, and those are freshmen. Freshmen at Houston aren't supposed to be able to do what these guys are doing this early in the year.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's you talked about Debansa, and look at what Flemings did. 22 on 8 of 13 shooting, 7 assists, and then had a huge block late. So we're seeing, the full repertoire of Flemings and how good he can be on the defensive end. And then Sunak, 18 and 9. Yeah, I mean, they're 4 games in, and we're seeing true freshmen for Houston be at the level of the rest of these guys, which is what Kelvin Sampson told us would be the case. And look, this game was pretty close the entire way, but it was 39-35 Cougars at halftime. They built a lead as much as 7 points. The pivotal stretch came with 1:26 left. Auburn cut the lead 73-70. Then, following a turnover by Flemings, Auburn's Murphy dunked it with 52 seconds of the clock to make it 73-72. And then, like you said, they got 3 goal line stances there after that.
And remember, this is basically a home game for Auburn. This game was played in Birmingham, Alabama, about a half hour from Auburn's campus. And there were not a lot of Houston fans there. So even though it's, air quotes, neutral on the piece of paper, this was very much a home crowd environment for Auburn. So I look at this as a quad 1 road win for the Big 12, and you're like, oh, well, Auburn lost a bunch of guys, and Bruce Pearl retired, right? Well, they still have Keyshawn Hall, who had 20 points. They still have Tashad Pettiford. They still have their top 2 players from last year's team that made a deep run. So this was a massive win for Houston.
Yeah, and I would say the other massive win, and look, when you look at the scoreboard from this weekend, did we expect TCU to beat number 6 Michigan? Did we expect Arizona State to beat number 19 Gonzaga? Did we even expect Colorado to necessarily beat Providence? Colorado's off to a great start, by the way, in terms of Power 5. No, so I think the games that were won, we expected Arizona to probably beat UCLA, and they did. We expected Houston to probably beat Auburn, and they did. So I think the games that we expected from a Power 5 standpoint, the outcomes were exactly what we expected. And I think, Anthony Del Orso continues to be a factor for Arizona. 20 points for him, 6 of 11, 4 of 7 from 3. So when we look at Arizona and say, can they be a good 3-point shooting team? They took 5 total 3-point shots, Arizona, in their opening season victory over the defending champs, Florida. And here in this game, Del Orso had 7 threes by himself. and then hit 2 crucial free throws with 17 seconds left. Del Orso did to hit the seal of the win.
It was a phenomenal weekend for the Big 12. Even in a loss for BYU, they're grabbing people's attention with how good Debansa is. Houston's win over Auburn, but you just hit it right there. Maybe the 2 most underrated wins of the entire non-conference so far came this weekend on Friday night with UCF beating Texas A&M 86-74, and then Colorado. That is a Providence team that people expected to be much better this year under Kim English, who's going into his 3rd year, the former Missouri great. He went 21-14 his first year, a step back last year, but they retooled their roster, and they were scoring over 90 points per game in their first couple of contests coming into this one, and Colorado beat them 97-88. Colorado has pieces. There are guys on that team that are future pros. They're international players. They're really young, and they're really raw, but they're in their 2nd year now, and in some cases 3rd now within that Tad Boyle system that he churns out NBA players. He's had guys drafted in 3 of the last 5 drafts, and a lot of that has to do with their development. So I'm very much looking at that Colorado win as a big one.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the wins overall in the Big 12, the freshmen performing, Debansa, the Houston freshman. But how about Darren Peterson? So in a game this weekend where Kansas knocks off Princeton, it's the 2nd consecutive game that Kansas is without Darren Peterson. Bidunga went off 25, 10, and 3 blocks, showing the potential for his power, especially against an overmatched, from an athletic standpoint, Princeton team. But Kansas plays Duke at Madison Square Garden tomorrow. Will they have Darren Peterson? Here's what Bill Self said after the Princeton win.
We're not obviously going to have him, at least for, the immediate future. I just don't know how long that'll be.
Interesting. How delightfully ambiguous there, James.
I mean, he's definitely not playing against Duke tomorrow.
That does feel like that's the immediate future, does it not?
That would be pretty immediate. And we have no idea what's actually going on. And if it's a right hamstring tightness situation, which is what Kansas has called it in the past. Again, we talked about this last week. You sit him. You sit him for these big games because you're going to need him in conference play. But hamstring injuries are injuries that can linger. And so how serious is the strain? Is it there's different grades for it. Is a grade 2 or 1, 2, or 3, whatever it may be. But the concern for KU is they've put so much of their eggs in the Darren Peterson basket that without him, this season looks really, really bleak, especially when you look at how strong these other teams have been so far in the non-conference.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was not the most optimistic quote from Bill Self.
No.
I mean, he was trying to struggle for the right words to say, and basically, like, we're not going to have him in the immediate future. Well, the immediate future for Kansas is an extremely important stretch for Kansas and for the Big 12. They've got Duke on Tuesday. Then they head to Vegas for that tournament, the Players Era tournament, where they'll play Notre Dame and Syracuse. And then they go to play UConn. Is that one in stores? No, that one's at Allen Fieldhouse against UConn. Then Missouri, then NC State. So, I mean, they're about to start a stretch here from Tuesday all the way until December 13th, where they're playing Duke, Notre Dame, Syracuse, UConn, Missouri, and NC State. All Power 5 matchups before they get a few tune-ups with Towson, Davidson before conference play starts. So we'll see how long they'll be without Darren Peterson. All right, coming up next, Chancellor Johnson, Big 12 analyst and content creator, joins us to recap the Hoops weekend. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.